And there's it. Welcome, everybody. My name is Heather Riggs. I'm Director of Administration here at the New England Museum Association. We would like to start off this webinar with our land acknowledgement by Scarlett.
Good afternoon, everyone. Virtual spaces cannot replace the lands that sustain and empower us. I'm at home in Worcester, Massachusetts, homelands of the Nipmuc Nation people and their allied tribes, past and present. The Nipmuc Nation Tribal Council is located at 25 Main Street, South Grafton. NEMA recognizes that our organization and those of our members were founded within a colonizing society, which continues the exclusions and erasures of many Indigenous peoples throughout New England and beyond. You can use the Indigenous Peoples land map. I'm going to drop a link in the chat to find the land where you're located or where your museum is located. And thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. Back to you, Heather.
Thanks, Scarlett, for that. So I'm not sure how many of you actually attended the last escape room by the Hood Museum, but it was a lot of fun. We learned a lot of stuff. If you did want to pop into that, just go over to our YouTube channel and we did record it. So that's available there. But today we're actually going to go outdoors, but we're kind of still inside. I have lots of windows around me. Let's put it that way. So I'm going to turn it over to the team from the Hood Museum. So Jamie, did you want to take over?
Nope, I'm going to take
Vivian's over here. I'm like looking at the three of you.
Hi, everybody. Welcome. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, start our program. Can everybody see the screen? We're all good? Excellent. All right. So once again, good afternoon. Happy lunchtime, everyone. I'm Vivian Ladd, teaching specialist at the Hood Museum of Art. And joining me today are my colleagues, Jamie Rosenfeld, Museum Educator, and Isadora Italia, Campus Engagement Coordinator. For those of you who are unfamiliar with us, the Hood Museum of Art is Dartmouth College's art museum. Located in Hanover, New Hampshire, it is situated on the ancestral and unceded lands of the Abenaki people. We serve the campus community and regional audiences. Today, we are going to invite you in small groups to play our virtual escape room game, Escape to the Outdoors. Today's participation is interactive, and I'd love it if you wouldn't mind, for those of you who are comfortable, go ahead and turn on your video screens. Or I'm just going to ask, how many of you have ever played an escape room game or are familiar with escape room games? If you don't want to turn your video on, you can just give me a thumbs up. I see a few hands, some shaking heads. Great. Well, no experience at all is required, but it's just kind of helpful to know where people are in this context. Escape room games are, for those of you unfamiliar with them, are immersive experiences. They're themed spaces in which teams attempt to solve a series of challenges in order to, quote unquote, escape the room. They are by definition immersive and tactile. They involve teamwork and problem solving, conversation and give and take. There's always a level of frustration and confusion, and that's actually kind of part of the fun. As we mentioned before, last year we gave a presentation at NEMA about our Assyrian Relief escape room game. That was a hands-on game that you actually played in person. We're going to talk about that a little bit more in our program today. But today's game is completely virtual, it's completely digital, and that's the game we're going to focus on. So today we're going to spend about half of our time together playing the game and the other half sharing our process, lessons learned, and answering questions. We really hope that our efforts in designing and creating escaping games will inspire all of you to think about creating an escape room game of your own. If at any time during this presentation you have comments or questions, please enter them into the chat and we'll try to get to all of them before the end of the presentation. I think you're all muted here. We would like to ask you to remain muted unless you have a comment to share or until we go into the breakout rooms. So Escape to the Outdoors was developed during the pandemic and conceived as a way for audiences to engage with public works of art on campus that remained accessible during the Hood Museum of Art's closure. It was also designed to provide an opportunity for social engagement and interaction during a time of isolation. And finally, it was developed with both Dartmouth students and the general public in mind. In just a moment, we're going to place you in randomly selected groups and send you into a breakout room. This digital experience is available on our website. It will be accessed through a link, which we'll place in the chat. And we're going to invite one person in each breakout room to click on that link and then share their screen with other members of the group. We really hope that you will play the game together and move through the challenges together. The game is completely self-explanatory on the website, but we wanted to share a few suggestions to guide your experience. So first of all, as you come into the game, be aware that you need to scroll down the page, in particular to find the green buttons that allow you to move forward or type your answer to the challenges that are presented. In addition, there's often instructions right near that green button that will help you understand how to input your answer. So how you input the answer is actually quite rigid. So sometimes we're going to ask you to enter your answer in title case or as a formula or with no spaces. So just be aware that those instructions are there. Also, at the bottom of each challenge page, there are a series of hints in these black boxes. Don't be proud. We encourage you to check out the hints. It's another aspect of the game design. And, they'll help if you get frustrated or you feel really lost, and they're incremental. So you can choose to try out one hint or all three. If you find you get totally stuck, can't possibly solve the challenge, the answer is also included in this bottom black bar. And that'll allow you to move forward in the game, even if you can't solve the challenge that you're engaged in. This is not a race. We're going to give you 45 minutes to play the game, and that should be ample for you to get through all 6 challenges. We really encourage you to take your time. Read the contextual information about each work of art. This is a game, but it's also an opportunity to learn about 6 extraordinary works of art in the museum's collection. So before we put that link in the chat and open up the breakout rooms, does anybody have any questions? And if so, you can just unmute yourself and just ask away. Know that we'll be popping in and out of the breakout rooms to provide technical assistance. And there is a button in the breakout rooms that says ask for help, and you can put any questions in there. We'll be here to answer them. All right, well then without further ado, I think Jamie's going to put the link in the chat, and we'll get started with our breakout rooms.
And I will be pausing the recording.
Welcome back. Oh, I'll wait.
There you go.
Welcome back. Congratulations. I didn't pop in at the very end, so I'm not really sure where we left off, how many people finished, and where you were. We'll go through the last 2, but did any groups finish entirely? Awesome, nice. Who was, I guess you wouldn't necessarily know if you were on the last one or the second to last one, but I'm pretty sure you all were there. So we'll go through all of those. Before we go through those, does anyone have just any reflections on the game that they want to share or your experience of it?
I'll share. I just really loved the couple different aspects, and we kept making note of them while we were going through, like the different uses of media, the way that it caused everybody to kind of step back and look at something from a different perspective. And there was really only one that we were like, we couldn't quite make the leap to the answer, but it's still like the whole thing was like, I really especially loved the bringing the other media into it and how they expanded on just the basic answer in the answer screen.
Great, thank you so much for sharing and for noticing our multimedia use. Anyone else want to share? Mary, can I ask which was the answer that wasn't so like
The
the connection wasn't which.
This thing, it said like what
Yeah,
else?
yeah.
So we thought it was weight. Like we were like putting in weights and like we're like, what in the world? Like weight would make this move. And but anyway, yeah, that was the only one that we couldn't quite make the jump to.
I thought you were going to say that. That's the only one that doesn't rely on a challenge or a riddle. It just relies on like using your eyes and making an inference, which is not what an escape room is. So it's the only one that doesn't totally fit
Yeah.
fit the escape room challenge. Any other just initial reactions? We're going to take time to go through the two final activity challenges, and then we'll talk about our process and we'll answer questions. But Elizabeth, I saw you had a...
I was just going to add, I was in Mary's group, and we also cheated a little bit because none of us remembered what's a lateral face. So she was Googling it. So we can try to remember these geometry terms that us history people and art people don't use anymore.
And that's what the other thing I liked about it was, and I was in the same group, that there wasn't just what you were learning, the knowledge content kind of piece, but then added to that, then there's this power of observation. You're like looking at this piece over and over again in a new way. So the combined, like this artifact observation with knowledge content, it was really great.
Great, thank you. Yeah, it was really important to us that people were continuing to look at the work of art, like throughout as many times as possible. And that there was a range of different types of knowledge and different types of challenges. I know whenever we test our games with our art museum colleagues, they always freak out a little when they see the math problems. But then when we use the game with other audiences, some people get the math problems right away. And so we like having that range. Okay, so I will take you through the last two challenges, and then I'll turn it over to Vivian to really talk about the history of the game. So let me just see a thumbs up. Had everyone seen this work of art? Okay, it looks like everyone just gave me a thumbs up. Had anyone not finished this? Had anyone thumbs up if you had not finished this challenge? Okay, it looks like everyone had finished. So let's put in the answer. I don't want to waste your time going through a challenge that you all did. I want to make sure if you didn't finish that you get to see the end.
So I had a quick question about this one.
Yes.
So the letter C is in red and it's Chi is the result. So was it that C started that letter? Because we started to look at gamma as the...
Oh yeah. Vivian, will you go back? Sorry, 1 second. So all of these quotations are real quotations from an article. And we've just aligned them so that they spell out the Greek letters starting with the red one. So Chi is CH. And then delta goes down this way.
Oh, I didn't even pick up
You
on
the
that. We were
hint.
just looking at what is the Greek version of C is what we were going with. We didn't look at the vertical alignment. Oh, that's clever.
And
Nice.
so, a lot of our challenges in both of our escape rooms, there are multiple ways to figure it out. And, so you were relying on previous knowledge of the Greek alphabet, but for people who don't know that at all, this is a way that they could figure it out. And then we kind of give a hint with the I also being red so that you see pi. Okay, so great. Going to the next one.
This is the hardest one to type in because it has so many letters. Oh no, you already got there. Okay.
Okay. And then this is the one that Mary brought up earlier. So Vivian, if you want to scroll down a little, this really explains the sort of mathematical thinking behind this work of art, that it's called X delta. And as you saw, there's chi delta pi. And it's a math equation that a variable X is added, a change will occur. And when the change occurs, the pi form moves. And the change occurs by getting on the swing. And so your weight and your body on the swing moves, is the change, which then moves the pi. So, you know, like Mary, well, I was saying to Mary, this is the only one that was a little bit of a stretch. So the answer is swing. And there's a video of a Dartmouth student talking about her experience on that work of art. And then this is our last work of art. And this one's often a pretty simple one. So it's a quick ending if people get to it. And it's basically presenting a work of art that is right outside of the Native American Studies department by a Native American artist who's really using abstract forms to show us figures, which is something you've seen throughout, you know, with your figure work of art at the beginning. But this is just asking you to look at the negative space in the sculpture and connect the shapes to the order of the shapes in the multiple choice. And so it's C. And then content pop-up tells you about that work of art and that artist and its inspiration. So congratulations to all of you. Great job. It was amazing coming into the breakout rooms and hearing you all talk and like figure out the riddles, but also we loved hearing your comments on the content pop-ups and just your experience of playing. So I'm going to turn it over to Vivian. She's going to talk about the history of the project, and then we'll talk to you about how we developed the website and how we're using it programmatically.
Okay, so Escape to the Outdoors was actually the third escape room we have worked on together as a team. Our first, as we mentioned earlier, was a physical game designed to bring small groups of people together at a table with a series of tactile riddles, puzzles, and challenges. It was inspired, our concept and our whole, efforts to create an escape room was really inspired by Carrie Sclafani of the Greater Hudson Heritage Network, who presented her concept for an escape room game at a regional conference a couple of years ago, a regional NEMA conference a couple of years ago. And her game was so ingenious. It was focused on a robbery that took place in a historic home in upstate New York. And the whole thing was contained within a box. There were a series of challenges in envelopes, and progression from one challenge to the next was controlled through QR codes and Google Forms. And we really want to credit Carrie because, as you'll see, our game is built very much on her format. So for our first escape room game, we decided to focus on a set of works of art that never leave the museum. A set of reliefs, ancient Assyrian reliefs from the palace of Ashurnasirpal II. They are essentially bolted to the wall and beautifully displayed in our ancient gallery. We wanted to create a game that could be played by a large number of people in a public program in our atrium, but could also be taken across campus and played by clubs and groups of Dartmouth students. We decided that each game would be followed by an experience, a facilitated experience in the galleries with the original works of art. So the essential challenge to this game is to determine the location of Dartmouth's 6 Assyrian reliefs in the original palace of Ashurnasirpal II. Each team gets a box, and inside the box are 6 envelopes with 1 challenge per envelope. Each envelope, as you can see, is labeled with a QR code, and that connects to a Google form on people's phones or tablets. Inside the box are also a set of intriguing tools, a brush, something that looks like a flashlight, scrap paper, a pencil. So the way it works is that essentially you hover your phone over the QR code, a link appears, and on your phone you get this Google form that presents the first challenge. In this case, it's a riddle that says, I carried the reliefs on my back across the desert. If every one of my kind were to die today, there would still be more next year. What am I? Inside the envelope, there's all kinds of photographs and archival material, which can be used to help solve the challenge. And Google Forms are great because if participants put in the wrong answer, a hint can pop up. In this case, say for instance, you type in camel, the hint that will come up is that the answer is a 4-letter word. Turns out there's multiple ways, once again, as Jamie was saying, to solve this challenge. There's a photograph that has a mule in it, in addition to a camel in the foreground. And then also this archival letter that was sent to Dartmouth from the excavation has the word mule in it. Once the right answer is entered, what we call a content pop-up appears on your phone, and it provides background information and a glimpse behind the scenes of these works of art. So when you come to Dartmouth and you see our Assyrian reliefs, you'll see they're beautifully conserved. But this particular photograph shows how brutally they were actually broken into thirds so that they could be mounted on the backs of mules, not camels, but maybe for part of the journey, camels, and transported out of the desert. The other 5 envelopes include all kinds of challenges in the form of puzzles, a word scramble, a blue light and invisible ink, an animal search in the hem and shoulder of the king's robes, a mysterious dial decoder, and then finally the map of the original plan of Ashurnasirpal's palace, which is what participants used to locate the original location of our reliefs. So the response to this game was tremendous. Our public programs were regularly sold out with long waiting lists. What was most gratifying is that when we took participants from our public atrium into the galleries to see the original works of art, we found that they were incredibly engaged. They barely needed us. They were so caught up sharing with one another their discoveries. They were asking questions. They often lingered long past the end of the program or the event. Similarly, Dartmouth students participated through clubs, residential communities, and on sports teams. So it seemed that this escape room format really generated curiosity, excitement, and wonder for the work of art at its core. So kind of flush with our success, we decided to make another one. And the next natural work of art for us to focus on was this incredible work of art, once again, permanent. It's in Baker Library. It's The Great Epic of American Civilization by Jose Clemente Orozco. And we had just started our work maybe a few months in when we realized it was going to be a long time before anyone gathered around a table and we're going to be handing each other materials. And so it was at that moment that we decided to pivot to public sculpture and a virtual format.
So I'm going to talk a little bit about the virtual format. And, the reason we wanted to show you the Assyrian Relief game is because it was so fundamental to building the game that you just played. Our experience having developed all of those challenges helped us to develop the challenges for the outdoor sculpture game. The big hurdle was kind of figuring out how to make it virtual. And actually our museum is still closed. We open in August. And so this need to turn to the virtual ended up really being a lot longer than I think any of us thought. So why did we settle on public sculpture? Even though we were creating a virtual game that could be played by anyone, anywhere, and so we could have used any works of art from the museum, we wanted to take advantage of the fact that while our museum was closed to the public, there was still art accessible throughout campus. Next slide, please. Only 50% of Dartmouth's student body was allowed on campus at any given term this past year. And so we wanted to give them and our local community an opportunity to interact with art. But also we wanted to reach Dartmouth students scattered all over the world and give them a way to connect to campus and the museum. For this reason, we wanted to make a website that could be used 3 different ways. So you see on the slide, the first way is that you can play remotely on your own, on a phone, tablet, desktop, that you could play remotely on Teams in Zoom, just like you did in breakout rooms. And we really wanted to facilitate social interaction during the pandemic. And so playing on Zoom was able to facilitate that. And then format 3 is for folks on campus or in the community that could play it in person or on Teams on their phone. Next slide, please. So after deciding on a virtual format and our outdoor sculpture collection, we devised a premise for the game, which you saw was the premise is fictional for both of our games, but all of the information about the art is factual. So we came up with the premise, and we selected which works of art to use, and then we divvied them up. We each took 2 works of art and built the challenges individually before coming back together as a group for feedback. This division of labor helped make the project very manageable. In order to come up with the challenges, we researched the works and scoured the internet and Pinterest for DIY escape room game ideas. It was imperative to us that the challenges relate directly to the works and help players learn about the art through the challenges. And like I said, it was imperative to us also that you continue to look at the works of art throughout the game. Next slide, please. Then we needed to figure out what platform to use. Though we used Google Forms and QR codes in our Assyrian Relief game, we did not think those would be flexible enough for our needs for this game, and we wanted something that looked professional enough to live on the web in perpetuity. We played an online Escape the Crate game that used Squarespace effectively, and ultimately we chose that platform. Next slide. So here are some of the reasons we chose Squarespace. It's highly customizable. You're really able to build the site to your needs. It has a polished professional look. It is easy to use, and there are a lot of YouTube tutorials, and we watched a ton of YouTube tutorials to make this. It's highly visual. We love the way that the artwork images look on the screen, and that was really important to us as an art museum. And it has mobile responsiveness. So like I said before, we wanted the game to be able to be played on a computer or on a cell phone. And so it was important to build our website to be suited for both. So you'll see on the right here, this is a view of the mobile screen, and you're able to toggle back and forth between the 2. Next, please. We reached out to 2 colleagues with experience in web design because we had no experience when starting this project. And they recommended we create a wireframe, which charted out what our entire website would include. So our website has 34 pages, and we created a joint Google Doc that listed the 34 pages and every single thing each page needed, every button, image, text box, hyperlink. And so here's a screenshot of our Google Doc so you can see the process we went through. It was very time consuming, but we highly recommend this step as it really helped to organize our thoughts and streamline our process before actually going into Squarespace and building the site. Each of us created the pages that related to the 2 challenges we designed, or the 2 works of art we designed, allowing us to equally share the workload. This was important because we all learned how to create and edit within Squarespace and could easily work on the project together. And I want to reiterate that none of us had ever built a website before, nor do any of us have any coding experience. And I say this because we believe that all of you have the capacity to make something like this if you are interested. And if you are interested, YouTube tutorials will be your friend. Next, please. This virtual format challenged us to really think about accessibility, and we had the opportunity to learn a lot. We really thought about participants with visual impairment when developing the game. We made sure image and text were as large as possible, given the constraints of the mobile format, and we added alt text to all of our images in case folks were using a screen reader. Here are some other examples of some changes and adjustments we made. So for instance, no, if you could stay on that slide, Vivian. Sorry, thanks. So we recognized that this ransom letter, these magazine clipping letters, could be really difficult for folks to read. And so we just added in text what was written above in the ransom letter below. Next. A couple of graphics. We had a coworker help us make versions that were more accessible and less stylized. So for instance, a lot of you were using the image on the left, and I know one group was reading the V as a U because it was really stylized. And so we created a more accessible graphic on the right to help with that. And we did that with the receipt as well. And I know some of you looked at both graphics for the receipt. Okay, next. And here's another one where we redid an image we had previously been using to help folks with color vision deficiency, and changed the colors and gave each one its own unique font to help. Next, we also invited Dartmouth Student Accessibility Office to play as a fun team building activity, but also as a way to solicit advice to make it more accessible. And they were really supportive of the work we had already done and the efforts we had made. And only had a couple of suggestions. They told us to add audio transcripts when we used audio. And so you'll see there were a couple of ways to access the audio in the transcript. And they showed us a contrast checker that you can use to check colors. And so we had to redo all of our buttons because we were using our hood branded gray and white, which was not high enough of a contrast. So we used black and white and dark green and white. Next slide, please. One thing that we know is still a challenge is that you can't see the answers that you are typing in. You only see the password dots. And we know that that's probably hard for folks. We've contacted Squarespace and there's nothing we can do about that. So we know that the website's not perfect, but we recognize that there are areas that still may be challenging. But it was a really good start and an important learning experience for us. And we're so happy with the way it looks. So I'm going to turn it over to Isadora, who will talk about how we use it programmatically, and then we'll answer your questions if you put them in the chat.
Thanks, Jamie. Next slide, please. So after testing for accessibility, we did additional test rounds with different audience groups to get feedback and optimize before officially launching. So we tested with Hood staff, Dartmouth students, and with different age community groups. And you can see here a page of Jamie's notes just to see how much feedback we got from just one round with undergrads. Next, please. And as Jamie mentioned, it was important for us to create a game that could be played by anyone, whether they were on campus or not. And these 3 different formats allowed for a lot of different options programmatically. Next slide. So far, we have hosted or helped facilitate 15 events. 2 were virtual public programs open to anybody. 3 were in-person programs in collaboration with campus groups, and 10 were virtual private programs in collaboration with campus or community groups. So we worked with a residential housing community, a group of graduate students, the Young Professionals at Dartmouth group, which is a group for staff and faculty. The Office of Student Involvement reached out for us to collaborate with them, and then a Hanover High School group did a virtual field trip where they played this game. And we found the virtual version really successful. Many individuals will sign up alone and join a random team, but in some instances, people will join with a team as a bonding experience. So alumni groups trying to reconnect families. And 92% of folks who played and filled out our post-game survey noted that they found it just challenging enough, which I think is a credit to all the test rounds we did and the invaluable feedback we got early on. So we could find out where maybe our instructions weren't clear, where it was a little too easy or too difficult, and optimize as much as we could. Next slide. And looking at just website analytics, over 1,200 visits, over 940 unique visitors, 38% of which played on campus, 62% of which played off campus. And though a lot of those folks played in New Hampshire, where we're located, in nearby Vermont, we have people tune in from all over the country and all over the world, even as far as the UAE and the UK. I'll also note that in the survey, a lot of folks said, and informally after events, people said, you know, I've passed by these sculptures a lot in my day-to-day, but I didn't really take the time to get to know them. and now I'm going to look at them in a new way. So we knew our efforts weren't in vain, and we felt really, really thrilled to get that response. Next. So as we move toward a new normal this fall and beyond, we definitely foresee using this game well into the future. So we just learned that there won't be programming restrictions on campus in the fall and for the upcoming year. So there will be a lot of opportunity to use this in person, whether it's something we facilitate ourselves or something that we encourage groups to use during bigger events like orientation or homecoming. We've also created signage, which you see some examples of here, which live in our atrium space. So as people are passing by to visit the galleries or to get from one place to the next, they might see it, activate the QR code to access the game right on their phones right there, and then they can play it on their own time. Next. And so some lessons learned. Select works that are permanent or semi-permanent. This will give you the most bang for your buck. You'll put a lot of time into it, so make sure it can be used for many months and years. It's also helpful to select works that fit the spirit of escape rooms, whether it's because they're situated in a physical room, sequentially placed like our outdoor sculptures, rich with symbolism, they have related archival material. All that will help you as you develop your challenges. It's helpful to make clear what is fictional and what is factual so people understand that they're learning along the way. Doing test rounds, like I mentioned, feedback is key. And it's helpful to test with different types of audiences so that you can get a good representation of people with different experience levels with the works of art and also different experience levels with technology. And lastly, teamwork makes the dream work and timing is everything. We've really benefited from collaborating, the three of us, because we work closely with different audiences, because we have different levels of knowledge with each of the sculptures. We were really able to bring in diverse perspectives and skill sets. And we also time our work with these escape rooms so that most of the work is done during the summer when the academic year is over and our workload is a little bit lighter. And so we're ready to launch in the fall and kind of build momentum through the academic year. So with that, I hope you enjoyed the presentation, that we've shown you that if we can do it, you can do it. And we're happy to take questions in the last 5 minutes or of course via email. And I think Jamie will share our emails in the chat.
I have a quick question. Did you think about branding other than escape room? I mean, there are other places that have called things mysteries or, I mean, I know escape room has a certain attraction to it, but did that seem just like the one that will fit best with what you were doing?
I think when we first conceived of this back in 2019, escape rooms were kind of trending. It was kind of the rage, and we had sort of been excited about the possibility of doing something like that in museums. So I think that we were caught up in that moment. I totally hear what you're saying. It's a really good question, because we do kind of stumble over the wording. Like, is it it's not really an escape room. It's sort of an escape room challenge, it's an escape room game. There probably could be other terms we could consider.
And there's a question in the chat that I'd like to read, or I'll answer. What are the differences between the versions made for on-campus play versus fully remote versus phone tablet? And there is no difference, which is the cool part. We've created one website that can be used in these 3 different ways. And so it's just the same website, and whether you pull it up on your phone or on your computer is the difference.
Yeah, and a couple other questions in the chat. Google Forms versus website analytics, getting information from those who just complete the survey versus a website that tracks all the movements. You know, you have to weigh the pros and cons of each platform that you're using and thinking about like your main goals and what, you know, are sort of things you hope for, but maybe, you know, won't work out. And I should have clarified that some of the analytics I got in terms of the just challenging enough, 92%, and some of the written user feedback about people looking at art in a new way, that was people who opted to fill the survey after. So yeah, some of that data comes in sometimes and some of it doesn't.
And even, oh, sorry, I just wanted to add with our Syrian escape room game, there is a final QR code when people finish playing that game that is a link to a survey, and they get a nice sticker if they fill out the survey for us. So that allows us to get some analytics with the QR codes and Google Forms as well.
Yeah, from one museum professional to another, we've had 100% survey participation rate with the Assyrian Relief game because our stickers are awesome. I want to answer the question about our target audience. The question is, was your target audience college age and up? How would you change the game for a younger audience? And I think when we first conceived of it, we really did think about it as being college age and up. In Isadora's role, she works with college students, and in Vivian's and my roles, we work with K through 12 students, adults and teachers. But we really were seeing this as an adult game. But then we had a couple of high schools reach out to us. They saw it on our website and they saw the marketing for the program. And we thought, yeah, why not work with high school students? And so that was a success. And then when school was closed and schools for a long time, and one middle school in particular was looking for things to do for their students over the breaks when no one could travel. And they reached out to us and asked us what we had. And we actually sent them the game and said that it would be good for 13 and up, 13-year-olds and up. But if you have younger kids, that you'd want to do it with an adult. Because we know that some of it just wouldn't be accessible for that age. We've got one more minute. Any last question?
I have a question. Is anyone considering creating an escape room game for their institutions? Show of hands. Yay.
Well, if you have any questions, our emails are in the chat. We are working on our third one this summer. We do one a summer so that we can launch in the fall, or at least we have for the last 3 years now. So if anyone has any questions, we're so indebted to Carrie Sclafani, who we met at NEMA for our escape room. And so we're happy to pass that on.
And hopefully
Yes.
next year we'll meet at Dartmouth and you can come play the game in person. That would be awesome.
I know that was our plan last year, so we'll try to do it again.
And for those who do create their escape rooms or have already created, please share with us. We love to play new games and always are learning by seeing what colleagues are doing. So please.
Yeah, Elizabeth, please send us yours. Great. Thank you all so much for your time and your participation.
Thanks, everybody. I want to thank Jamie, Vivian, and Isadora for sharing today. The second round of their escape rooms. It's always a lot of fun to play during work. I do appreciate that. So that's a nice, enjoyable thing. Make sure you check out our NEMA website for upcoming programs. As I mentioned, today's session was being recorded. You'll be able to find a link on the NEMA website to all of our other recordings if you want to, spend an afternoon watching videos. We have a bunch of them. So I look forward to seeing you, everybody, at a future NEMA event. Thanks. Bye.